Today we are talking all about amigurumi mistakes, knitted and crocheted toys, but more importantly, how to avoid them. Hi everybody, I'm Elise from the blog LePetitSaintCrochet.com, and today I'm really excited to be sharing this topic with you all about amigurumi mistakes and how to avoid them. So this is really a way for me to answer a lot of the questions that I get on a very regular basis. So people send me DMs on Instagram and Facebook about their amigurumi problems. My love affair with amigurumi started back in December of 2017 after I did a wonderful tutorial from Woolly Wonders Crochet. I will leave a link for her YouTube channel in the description box below. And I made this little chubby bunny and I thought he was so cute. And from that moment on, I loved amigurumi. I wanted to crochet toys and eventually I started knitting them. But I began to notice pretty early on that there were mistakes. Now this guy, as cute as he is, has got a couple of problems. These are the things that I'm going to address today. There are common mistakes that we have all made. I've made them, you've made them, but there are ways and there are tricks and there are tips, and just sometimes knowing about these problems helps to correct them, because the next time you're going to think, oh yeah, let's not do that, because by focusing on these details, your crocheted and knitted toys are going to look better and better and better. The reason that I'm starting with the face and why I think it is the most important part of any amigurumi toy is that we are naturally drawn to looking at the face, if it's a person or a toy. So by getting that part right, you basically are getting almost all of it right. Now, most of the projects that I do start from the top down. I have done some projects that start from the feet up. And to be honest, those usually aren't my favorite, because I feel like if I get the face right, then I'm home free. Then everything else is pretty simple after that. And there are some reasons and there are some things about faces that make them a tiny bit more tricky than other parts. So let's start by talking about this little wolf from Animal Friends Peek Pal. As you can see, his face is quite detailed. There's a lot going on. He's got ears. He has embroidered ears. He has a nose, a snout. He has cheeks. He has eyes. He has facial shaping. So one of the most important parts of a face is creating that symmetry. When we want to make something symmetrical, it's really important to pin the things that we need to sew on, like the ears and the snout. It just makes it look a whole lot better and pin those parts in place. The second part that makes the face a little bit tricky is the embroidering. So for this little guy, he's got an embroidered nose and mouth. My recommendation is to really just practice those embroidery stitches. That's a satin stitch for the top, and that's just a back stitch there for the bottom. But if you will try to keep in mind that idea of symmetry, keeping things really even, but also keeping things neat. I cannot tell you how many times I will rip out, especially the embroidery, because if it doesn't look good, it really shows when you are embroidering the face. I generally recommend using embroidery floss. It's really inexpensive. You can basically almost find it anywhere, but I really believe that it creates a very neat and clean look. It's easier to get it very symmetrical. Now, I will say for the ears for this guy, I did use yarn. I wanted some nice thick stitches, and I really think that embroidery floss kind of would have looked a little bit with that. So use your judgment, but generally when you're doing finer details, I just recommend using embroidery floss. The next amigurumi mistake is not counting your stitches. I used to be the queen of this mistake because I would always forget, and when I would get to a decreased row, I would wonder, oh my goodness, what is happening? Why don't I have the right amount of stitches? So now I'm pretty good about counting my stitches, whether I am crocheting or knitting a toy. This is my Bitty Bunnies pattern. It is a free pattern on my blog. In case you're interested, I'll leave a link for it in the description box below. But this is one of the prime examples of why counting stitches is really important. So the way the legs are constructed in this pattern is it is worked from the top down, which is my favorite way to do things. Once you get to this bottom section is when you separate out the legs and you start crocheting them in the round. So the problem is, if you're not counting your stitches, this is the trickiest part. This is where you will lose stitches and you will wonder, oh, why don't I have enough stitches in those legs? The most common question that I get is about stuffing. I can answer one of two ways, and basically that depends on if it is a crocheted toy or a knitted toy. For all my crocheted and knitted toys, I use the original polyfill. I think this stuff works really good and it's very inexpensive. It's easily accessible. You can find it at Walmart. You can order it from Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description box below, especially if you can't find it locally. But I think this stuff works really good. If you have never crocheted or knitted toys before, you'd be surprised how much you're going to use, because this stuff is kind of fluffy right now, and then once you pack it into the toy, it's really going to condense down, so you are going to need more than you think. For crochet toys, you are going to want to overstuff them a little bit. The polyfill over time is going to deflate, which will result in a toy that looks a little bit more like this. And for me, I want to keep my toys nice and shapely. I like that he can still stand up. I crocheted him about 9 to 12 months ago, and that is the goal. You've got to overstuff it just a little bit to the point where you're thinking, oh, this is a little bit too much, but I promise you that over time it's going to deflate and your toy will maintain that perfect shape if you just do it just a little bit too much. For stuffing little skinny areas like the arms and the legs, I have a couple of tools that I use that are very helpful. So number one, if you have a pencil around, you will notice that on the eraser it's kind of rubbery. This is perfect. It kind of sticks to that polyfill, and I use this end of it to really stuff and get down into those little nooks and crannies. This is very helpful. This is one of those little sticks that actually comes in the polyfill bag. One day it accidentally broke and I thought, oh, I'm gonna have to throw it away. But I found that this little jagged edge here, if you're very careful, grips the polyfill so nicely, and I'm able to really get into all those nooks and crannies so much easier. So I recommend, you've got those long little dowels in that polyfill bag, break it. You have that nice jagged edge. Just be a little bit careful because you can snag your stitches. For most of the time, it really doesn't bother it at all, and I am able to get really into all those little spots that I want to. For knitted toys, you are going to stuff completely differently than you would a crocheted toy. So this is my new little piggy. She is from Little Cotton Rabbits. This is a wonderful pattern. I will leave a link for it in the description box below. But knitting creates a very stretchy fabric, especially compared to crochet. So if you were to just overstuff this, this is going to totally distort the shape of your toy. You have to stuff lightly with these toys. You have to stuff until you get the desired shape, because stuffing for knitted toys actually is part of the shaping process, which for crochet, that is totally different. You are shaping with your stitches, not with the stuffing. So be very, very careful. For example, with this little piggy in the face, I am adding stuffing to these cheeks because I want the cheeks to expand a little bit. I've added stuffing to the top of the head because I want the head to be stuffed a little bit higher, especially for the little snout. These little details. For her little tummy, you want to stuff so that that little tummy kind of sticks out like that. These are the places that you really, really, really need to be careful and add that little bit of stuffing, because it's going to enhance the shaping of your toy. I've got a couple universal stuffing tips for crocheted and knitted toys. So for the arms, I'm very careful about only stuffing the bottom 2/3 of the arm, because if you were to get close into this shoulder joint, these arms are going to stick out straight like this. So I just leave this part unstuffed. Now, of course, if you want the arms to stick straight out, then stuff it all the way to the top. But if you want a more natural look, like their arms are just laying nicely at their sides, just leave the top third unstuffed. Also for the legs, I do the exact opposite. I stuff the legs as firmly as possible because I want them to stay very firm even when it begins to deflate a little bit, because I want them, if they're propped up, to be able to stand. I don't want them to crumple. Now, if you wanted your toy to sit nicely, you could leave the top third of the leg unstuffed. That way it could bend easily. Thank you so much for stopping by the Le Petit Saint Crochet YouTube channel. This was part 1 of Amigurumi mistakes, and next week I will be sharing part 2, and you don't want to miss that. So if you would please subscribe to my channel, hit that little bell for all the notifications, and I will see you all next week.